Welcome, everyone, to the Secret of Oneness. And this is a continuation of Mastering Duality Part 1. This is going to be called Mastering Duality, the Quantum Shift. Now, I know that you all know me because we are one. For those of you who are still asleep and haven't woken up yet, my name is Stephen. I'm going to start off with a quote from Neville. This is the same quote that was in Part 1. Duality is an inherent condition of life. Everything that exists is double. Man is a dual creature with contrary principles embedded in his nature. They war within him and present attitudes to life which are antagonistic. This conflict is the eternal enterprise, the war in heaven, the never-ending struggle of the younger or the inner man of imagination to assert his supremacy over the elder, the outer man of the senses. So this is where we're talking about. This is where the duality happens. And if you haven't seen Part 1 yet, go back and watch Part 1. I'll put a link above and you can go watch that one first because it's going to go right into this one right here. And the Part 1 talks about the carnal mind and the spirit and how they're both creating within yourself. So you're going to want to watch that before you get into this one. So I have here, this is a continuation again. This is Genesis 32, 25, and 26. When the man saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was dislocated while he wrestled with him. Verse 26. Then he said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So those of you who have read the story before, you know that Jacob wrestles with a man, right? Or appears to be a man. Now, in this teaching, because it's talking about the quantum shift, and the first Part 1 was talking about the struggle within yourself, I have here, let me read verse 25 again so we can get into the specifics of what each thing means in this metaphorical explanation here. So 25, it says, when the man saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip. And the socket of Jacob's hip was dislocated while he wrestled with him. Now, to prevail means to overcome, endure, or had the power. But it says that he did not prevail. So he did not overcome, endure, or had the power. The word touched means strike, plague, or reach. And remember, when you touch something, you can strike it as a violent strike. It can be something that you caress. It can be in a sexual manner. It can be anything along those lines from A to B, right? So it means to strike, plague, or reach. The socket is actually the palm, or it means hollow, which also is power, okay? So the socket doesn't always have to be the hip socket. It can be, obviously, you have sockets in your shoulders and things like that. But the socket in Hebrew means palm or the hollow, like an open hand. The hip is also referenced as the thigh. And in Scripture, in the spiritual description, it means strength or authority and balance and even procreation. So that's why they talk about, because your hips, your thighs, that area creates, obviously, they saw that as a position of authority and strength. So out of the joint, which means to dislocate, or it can also mean to alienate or abandon. Okay? Separation. Jacob, the name Jacob means supplanter, which means to supersede, replace, or take the place of something. And wrestle, in Part 1, I mentioned it. Actually, wrestle, the actual description means to get dusty, which I thought was interesting because man is made from the dust. So it's saying to wrestle and become dusty. It also can mean struggle, grapple, and metaphorically, it can mean spiritual or moral contest. So wrestling doesn't have to be a physical wrestling, like two people wrestling on the ground. It can be an internal struggle. It can be an internal wrestle, or something that's morally or spiritually an experience within yourself that you're contesting over. Verse 26, then he said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. Okay. Now when it says, and he said, which means to speak, to say, or to utter. Let me go means to depart, send away, or forsake. The breaking means actively ascend or be higher up. And the day means morning, daybreak, sun rises in the morning. And you bless me means to kneel down and surrender. So I'm going to put this in a metaphorical perspective to help you understand how part 1 and part 2 are connected. So remember, in the verse 25, what it's really saying here is, in the beginning, the strength was seen and had not yet endured. But during a spiritual contest, a strike was made against the power and the authority, against the oaths and the promises of the old identity, to dislocate and cause abandonment. The I am is trying to be revealed and separate from you, and separate you from your carnal thinking. So this grappling, this wrestling that Jacob's doing, it's all about that the I am is trying to separate you from your carnal thinking. Okay. And verse 26, I put, it was spoken, depart, ascend, and rise up. It was spoken, you cannot depart unless you kneel down and surrender. Okay. So here's where the whole thing comes together. Because remember, Jacob wrestled with a man, but man, it wasn't a man. He didn't wrestle with a man inside of himself. He wrestled with a man inside of himself, which is the carnal man, the carnal reality. So I have here that this is unwavering persistence in consciousness. Jacob is representing your lower self, okay? The human perspective. And Jacob holds fast to the higher state. He's struggling, he's wrestling with that higher state. How many of you have tried to manifest something? And again, I always want to preface that by saying we're never manifesting anything. It's who are we becoming? It's who are we being is what you're going to be experiencing. So Jacob holds fast to the higher state. He demands the blessing, which is the shift in identity, the assumption of the wish fulfilled. So that's what Jacob's wrestling with. He's wrestling with the carnal reality, but he was trying to step in to that higher self, to that assumption of the wish fulfilled. That's where the struggle is. That's where the carnal reality has to be superseded, right? By the I am. Manifestation comes when you cling to the new state until it blesses you. So you have to persist. When you go within yourself and you go within imagination and you're meditating, manifestation will come when you cling to that new state and you stay there until it blesses you, until you recognize yourself as that new identity, until you let go of the carnal reality and all of its limitations and recognize that you are the I am and you are unlimited. You stay there until it blesses you. You refuse to return to the old, refuse to go back to that old identity. This is a moment of inner assurance where you become fully identified with the desire as already done. So in that place of wrestling, and we're not talking about mental gymnastics. What we're talking about is entering into the rest of who you are. Because remember, you've always been the Christ. You've always been the I am. But along the way, you've lost yourself because you've applied all of these labels and conditions. And I'm sad and I'm broke and I don't have any friends and this happened to me and I have this trauma in my life. You've labeled all of those things on top of yourself and you've identified as that human character that has all of those problems. And that's not you. When you go within yourself and you're quiet and you just imagine just being present, that's the real you. That's the consciousness. That's the Christ. That's who you really are. And when you're in that place, you recognize that there is no conditions. There's no struggle. But you can make it a struggle. You can try to maneuver yourself. You know, some people will say, okay, if I just sit here long enough, I'll align myself and then I'll be that identity. Or if I sit here long enough and I think about that identity long enough and who I am, that eventually it'll just line up and I'll just get this epiphany and I'll just know who I am. It's all about letting go of all your limitations, because underneath of that, you're unlimited. Let me say that again. You've always been unlimited. You just have to let go of all the limitations that you're saying that you're not. It's always the I am not. I am not this. I am not that. I don't have any money. I'm not the vice president. I don't have a job, but I'd like to. Let go of all those limitations and quantum shift.